Within the console space, there are usually 3 different series that get brought up for stealth action: Metal Gear Solid, Hitman, and Splinter Cell. But during the same year as Metal Gear Solid's release on the PS1, there were 2 other stealth action series that were making their mark with their first entries. Siphon Filter was one of them, which was developed by a very small team and helped to popularize the genre. But the other game was one that preceded both Siphon Filter and Metal Gear Solid, and this was Tenchu Stealth Assassin. Tenchu is a beloved classic by many, but is not brought up enough when discussing stealth action. It was just as important as Metal Gear Solid and Siphon Filter on the PS1 in popularizing this genre. Join me as we take a look back at Tenchu Stealth Assassins. The idea for Tenchu started with the lead creator, Takuma Endo, while he was in college. It was here that he started to develop games, and after graduation, he took several freelance jobs within the industry. This resulted in Endo starting his own company in 1994 that would be known as Acquire. About around this time, Sony was going to be releasing their first game console, and Acquire was very interested in developing a game for it. Sony Music Entertainment was running a competition, and the winner would be able to develop a game for the PlayStation. Acquire won, but found themselves struggling for 6 months to come up with an idea that they wanted to pursue. After 6 months of struggling, the developers came up with a ninja concept for their game. Acquire used Japanese folklore for inspiration for many of the locations and images used within the levels. This game would feature 2 protagonists that served a ninja clan, and target people who were corrupt and greedy. And the name of this game would be known as Tenchu. Tenchu means to attack the person who did the wrongdoing, which would fit the theme of this game's story. Originally, Acquire was set to work with Sony to only release the game in Japan, but during the development it caught the eye of Activision to release the game in America. Activision spoke with Sony, as Sony had no intention of releasing the game outside of Japan, but Activision felt that there would be an audience for this game in America. On the publisher side of things, this was a huge gamble considering that this would be Acquire's first game. So the developer was brand new to the industry and wanted to make something new and original, and Activision wanted to make sure that the game received the most exposure it could get and saw the potential in it. At one point during early development, the game was going to have a more science fiction style backdrop, but this was eventually dropped for a more traditional setting with some supernatural elements. Tenchu would be set in feudal Japan and be a stealth action game that focused on the deadly nature of being a killer from the darkness. It was important to note as well that not only was Tenchu Acquire's first game, but many members of the team took on several roles to get this project done. For example, the project director took on other roles like writing, planning, sound editing, and many more. The developers wanted to incorporate the option to choose between 2 characters for the campaign. The story would alter slightly depending on which character the player chose. Tenchu would feature a wealth of different items to use. Different offensive items like throwing stars and smoke bombs would be used in conjunction with the player's blades. A grappling hook would be one of the most useful items to the player. The idea was to have an item that the player could use at any time, anywhere, as a means to escape from enemies on the ground. The team struggled to implement this feature and almost dropped it from the game, but the team felt that the grappling hook was too helpful to the player and found a way to make it work as they intended it. Implementing the grappling hook was not the only challenge that the team faced. The PlayStation was a new platform and the team was playing in a new space for their game. The development of the game had trade-offs between engine performance, frame rate, and the gameplay. This meant that the team had to find a good fit for the use of the draw distance within their game. Being that this was a stealth game, the player would need to be able to identify targets before they saw the player. To make the relatively low draw distance less noticeable, Tenchu would only set its levels at night. The night setting assisted the game, and the developers felt like it fit nicely with the characters within the world. With Activision publishing Tenchu outside of Japan, it was briefly considered to port the game to the N64, but this was later dropped and decided to stay as a PlayStation exclusive. explosive. Tenchu was an ambitious idea for a young studio's first game. Acquire wanted to create a stealth action game that put the players into the shoes of a ninja in feudal Japan. While the game would feature options for more direct combat, the focus of the experience would be on the stealth. To achieve their vision, the team would need to take on more than one role to complete their project, along with overcoming many challenges. This consisted of implementing the grappling hook for traversal, the draw distance, along with finding ways to save on data to put everything the team wanted onto one disc. Tenchu was presenting something completely new to the market, and thankfully Activision saw and worked to issue the game outside of Japan. Tenchu would be Acquire's first game, along with them entering into a relatively unknown space in the gaming market. These developers were working to effectively help create a genre within the 3D space. In February 1998, Tenchu was released to the world. Tenchu Stealth Assassins is a stealth action game that doubles as a ninja simulator. It is one of the original games to popularize the stealth action genre while still being an engaging experience to this day. There are easily aspects about this game that are dated, from the low view distance, the cumbersome elements in combat, along with the so bad it's good voice acting. But the game still excels where it matters in solid design and gameplay. The freedom provided to the player in these levels greatly enhances the experience, along with providing a lot of replay value. Tenchu Stealth Assassins is an awesome game. Tenchu can take some time to get comfortable with the controls. The amount of different moves is pretty good, and it will take some experimentation to get it all down and commit it to memory. The player can slowly sneak around the environments along with hugging walls to get a better view at their enemies while staying hidden. You can instantly kill most enemies if you attack them while they are not alerted to your presence. These kills are very satisfying. You can even get creative with some of them as you wait for one to get into the right position, and then roll off a roof right into a stealth attack. There is an indicator on the bottom left that lets you know if an enemy is near you, along with notifying the player if they have been seen. When seen, you can opt to run away, or you can try to engage the enemy in open combat. This is where some of the more clunky aspects come into play. There are a good amount of moves that you can use, like different evasions by double pressing the joystick in the direction that you want to dodge. Blocking works a bit differently, as you need to hold down on the joystick or the D-pad to block incoming attacks. This can get a bit clunky at times since left and right control your turning, so if you are using the left analog stick, you can easily move the camera in a direction that you did not want to when you are intending to only block an attack. There is some room for creativity with the open combat with your gadgets or your different sword attacks, but a lot of it comes down to playing conservatively as you wait for the enemy to hit you. You block the attack and then you get a few hits in. Sometimes your sword will outright miss an enemy, along with an enemy's weapon outright missing you, even though in both situations it looked like it should have been a hit. This can cause some frustration with you taking some hits that you didn't think would connect and others that you would dish out that should have landed. This happens a decent amount of the time and it can be really annoying, which is why I would recommend either playing a more stealthy approach or fighting conservatively to ensure you really get those hits in. While the open combat does have some flaws and dated aspects, the options for both stealth and open combat are appreciated and add a lot of replay value to the game. I really like how Tenchu offers the player with options. Do you try to stand your ground, or do you flee to attack from a different position? Tenchu's design encourages the player to experiment with its toolset, and it is really enjoyable. The game does provide you with an optional training mission if you want to utilize it. This is a short level where the player can get their feet wet with the stealth, combat, and traversal options. This isn't a stage that explicitly tells the player what moves are at their disposal or how to do them. Instead, this level acts like an area where you can experiment with some of the game's systems. It is still up to the player to try and figure it out for themselves through experimentation. The first level in the game is a nice combination of good design and provides meaningful exploration and discovery. discovery. When you enter a level, you are greeted to a narrated briefing. Here you gain some information on your target. Then the game drops you into the level and the rest is up to the player. Tenchu really leaves it up to the player on how they want to tackle the level. You have a few different items that can assist you as well, but the level presents itself as a mini sandbox to explore. This results in an experience that provides impactful player discovery because of the hands-off nature of the game. Tenchu does not hold the player's hand towards their objective, or even fully explain how the gadgets work with their entire moveset. This means that there is a learning curve here and skills that the player can work on. So the objective in the first level is to kill your target, and there are many guards around his compound. Thankfully, the game provides you with a map so you can figure out where you have been. The freedom here, even in the first level, allows for enjoyable player discovery. The player needs to find their target, and through this, the player may come across extra items and ninja gadgets to use in the level, like more healing items or even bombs. There are plenty of rooftops that the player can use to hide from the enemies or traverse a large amount of the map without needing to worry about being seen. Once you find your target, there are some quick cutscenes with 2 scripted fight encounters, and then the mission ends. Tenchu's missions really lend themselves to being very replayable. The first time through a stage, you are learning the area, where the target is, the position of the guards, along with any pickups you may want to use. After you have learned all of this, you can decide how you want to play around in that space if you choose to go back to it. The game encourages replaying its stages through the different unlockable items that you can earn by getting high mission rankings, along with enjoyable cheat codes that you can put in. Considering the time when this came out and the amount of freedom available to the player, this part of the design is really appreciated. You can choose to focus on avoiding most enemies and only killing when absolutely needed, or focusing on taking each enemy out without them ever knowing you were there. Or you can go for a more direct approach with a mixture of swordplay and gadgets. The levels provide themselves with a space for the player to explore and enjoy, and the moveset and gadgets enhances the options that the spaces provide. To enhance the replay even further is how each of the levels have a few different layouts where things get changed around in them. Essentially, it is the same mission with some things changed around. I really enjoyed the wealth of different gadgets that you can earn and use in the game. The disguise allows you to temporarily look like someone that the guards would not suspect, and while it only lasts for a limited period of time, it can help you get past a hard spot or provide you with an easy kill. The sleeping powder instantly knocks out an enemy and allows you to make quick work of them. One item lets you move really fast, while others let you breathe fire. You can even call in a friendly dog to attack enemies for you, along with setting up a decoy to confuse them. What gadgets you use and when all comes down to how you want to play the game. Before you enter a mission, you can choose which equipment you want to take with you, and this is where some of the player expression comes into play, as you pick which items that you want to fit your playstyle. I really enjoyed how there's a nice variety of different stealth takedowns that you will perform, with some even ending in a decapitation. There is a decent amount of dismemberment in the game and a wealth of blood to add to the satisfaction of the enemy deaths. There is a good amount of enemy variety as well, like dogs, different guards, range fighters, large enemies, and even some that will stalk you on rooftops. It is important to note that this game rewards you for your patience and finding the best time to strike, along with overcoming the general difficult nature of the game. Tenchu can be pretty tough as you try to complete what the levels throw at you, along with becoming comfortable with the dated aspects about the controls. While the story is not the main focus of the game, the missions do connect together, and with the option to select 2 different characters, there are some differences in the cutscenes, providing a nice incentive to go back to the game. The opening cutscene is awesome with great music. The mission briefings have some pretty solid voice acting with very simple presentation. Most of the cutscenes have voice acting that is so bad that it's good. Most of these are unintentionally hilarious, and they turn a weak aspect of the game into a positive.
Lord Gorda expects much of you. The enemy will be skillful and ruthless. You must be prepared physically and spiritually. You must focus. You must train hard and train well.
Merely a token of our appreciation.
I like the way you think. What can I help you with today?
Tenchu is a really awesome game with some dated aspects and flaws in some areas. The general movement and camera control is something that is going to take a while to get used to. The entire thing feels clunky to control, and at times the camera does have a mind of its own and will block your view of the action, potentially putting you into a bad situation. Tenchu has a very low draw distance, and while I understand this is mainly from the limitations of the hardware at the time, it can actually impair you in situations where you think a guard is only by himself, but it is revealed that there was another enemy close by and you get detected. While many of these things can be very annoying, I can chalk up many of this to the clunky nature of it being on the PS1. But the following things I found to be the worst parts of the flaws. There are some spots in the levels that can instantly kill you if you fall down a hole. This can accidentally happen in combat or even through some of the platforming. The jumping isn't the best for situations like this, and if you die, there are no mid-mission checkpoints. These sorts of parts feel very cheap. But like I said at the beginning of this section, Tenchu really does have it where it matters. This wasn't only one of the very first 3D stealth action games, but the design aspect of this set up a foundation for the series and other stealth games to draw inspiration from. It is really impressive how many of the levels within Tenchu offer so many different approaches to them. In many of these levels, they feel like enjoyable mini sandboxes that encourage you to come back to them and toy around with the AI. This is further seen with how the game offers a debug mode and allows you to really mess with a lot of options. This design and extras are the sort of things that really extends out the game's length and provides more value to the player. Tenchu is a game that offers a lot of options to the player, along with encouraging the player to master its systems and levels. Before we move to the conclusion, I need to mention the soundtrack. From the opening cutscene to the very last level, each of the levels have memorable tracks that fit the atmosphere and enhance the stealth action. Tenchu has a great soundtrack, and here are a few tracks from the game. Tenchu is a forgotten classic and an awesome game. 1998 was a rich year for stealth action games, with Metal Gear Solid, Siphon Filter, and Tenchu being the one to lead the way at the start. The open design and freedom that the game provides to the player is really impressive. The gameplay mechanics are learned through experimentation, and as such, the player is able to feel like they are growing their skill set the longer they play the game. It doesn't hold your hand, and while that may be frustrating when first learning the game, it presents this welcomed older design of figuring it out for yourself, and as such, those accomplishments stay with the player longer. The levels and exploration are enjoyable along with the stealth. While there are plenty of dated aspects about the game, Tenchu still retains elements about its design that makes it special. Tenchu is an impressive experience for a studio's first game, and would be the beginning of a new genre and franchise. I highly recommend playing Tenchu, and thank you very much for watching.